morning to everybody. It's such a privilege for me to have another opportunity to share a portion of God's word with everybody here. Now, there is a story of a high school student by the name of Jack Taylor. Now, Jack, he has it all. He's got friends, he's got fame, he's got a basketball scholarship, and you know what? He's got the hottest girlfriend in school. Until one day, an old, unpopular friend from his childhood walked into the school campus with a gun, and he shot himself. Now, in the wake of this tragedy, Jack begins to question what he wants his life to be about. He starts seeing life differently and making choices that cost him his friend, even his girlfriend, his reputation, and his popularity. Now, Jack learns that it isn't easy to go against the crowd. It's hard to do the right thing and make the right decisions when everybody else is making the wrong ones. The prophet Elijah knew all about this. A long time ago, there's an evil king by the name of King Ahab. And 1 Kings 16 verse 30 tells us, Ahab, son of Omri, did more evil in the eyes of the Lord than any of those before him. Now, Ahab was known as the champion of evil. First, he seduced the people of Israel into worshipping false gods, and then made it his personal mission to stamp out any remnants or genuine faith left among God's people. He hunted, he trapped, and he slaughtered every prophet of the one true God. On the run and hiding in caves, afraid for their lives, King Ahab eventually killed all of these prophets, all but one, and that's Elijah. Elijah was the last prophet of God left. Now there is Obadiah. Who is Obadiah? Obadiah, a servant of King Ahab, even told Elijah in 1 Kings 18 verse 10, it says, as surely as the Lord your God lives, there is not a nation or kingdom where my master had not sent someone to look for you. And whenever a nation or kingdom claimed you were not there, he made them swear they could not find you. He even threatened the kings of other nations that might have been hiding Elijah. But God continued to protect his last prophet. He never allowed Ahab to find Elijah until one day Elijah walked right into the king's palace. Now the king could hardly believe his eyes. Let us turn our Bibles to 1 Kings 18. 1 Kings chapter 18. 1 1 King chapter 18, verse 17 and 18. It says, when he saw Elijah, he said to him, "Is that you, you troubler of Israel? I have not made trouble for Israel." Elijah replied, "But you and your father's family have. You have abandoned the Lord's commands and have followed the Baals." And then Elijah issued a challenge. He told Ahab to gather all the prophets of Baal and all the prophets of Asherah and meet him on Mount Carmel. There, in front of Israel, Baal's prophets would prepare a sacrifice to their God, and Elijah would prepare a sacrifice to his God. Now Elijah says, "Then you call on the name of your gods, and I will call on the name of Yahweh, the God who answers with fire. He is God." Now, out of sheer pride, Ahab agreed to the challenge. Now, as this contest plays out, there are several principles and lessons we can learn that are just as true today as they were back in the days of Elijah. There will always be more false prophets in the world than preachers of truth. There were how many prophets? 450 prophets of Baal gathered on Mount Carmel that day. Not only that, there was 400 prophets of Asherah. Now Elijah was outnumbered 850 to 1. As the contest began, he wanted the crowd to be clear that he was the underdog. So he announced in 1 King 18 verse 22, Elijah said, "I am the only one of the Lord's prophets left." But Baal has 450 prophets, and Asherah had 400. Now, over the centuries, however, things haven't changed that much. Sure, there's a lot of churches all over the world, and nearly a third of the earth's population claims that they are Christians. But there are just as many false prophets in the world as they were back then. Now, many of these prophets may not look like prophets. Some wear lab coats, for that matter. But the message is the same. Your God isn't real. Atheism is the fastest growing religion in America. Under the cover of science and reason, many atheists are often the most aggressive protagonists and are just looking for any opportunity to get into an argument with the Bible-believing Christians. Of course, atheists aren't the only false prophets around. There are a lot of other religions in the world, each claiming to be the real religion. You have the Mormon Church, the Jehovah's Witness, you've got Islam, and Islam actively opposes Christianity all the time. You've got Scientology, which have a celebrity endorsements. Perhaps the greatest lie of the postmodern movement is that it doesn't matter what you believe. Mark Hopper was a professor of the world religion at college. And he once told a class about a missionary trip he took to India. While he was there, he met with a local man who is a Buddhist. Now this man took him to show him around of what's going on in India. Yes? And one day, this man took him to a Buddhist temple. When Mark walked in, he was amazed by all these strange and peculiar statues lining the walls of the temples, and each of these represents a different god. Now suddenly, he felt a poke in his side, and it was his friend. His friend said, come and look at this statue. You see that one? You recognize that one, don't you? He asked Mark. That's your God. Now Mark looked up to see a statue of Jesus on a cross, as if Jesus was just one among many. You see, in their minds, you can be a Buddhist, you can be a Christian, you can worship whatever God you want. Now that's how the world wants us to think as well. A few years ago, on an episode of the Oprah Winfrey Show, while taking questions from the audience, Oprah said, there are many paths to what you call God. Now there was a woman sitting in the audience, and she spoke up and said, what about Jesus? You say there is more than one way, but there is one way and only one way, and that is through Jesus. Now, before quickly cutting to commercials, Oprah said, no, that's not true. That can't be true. Why can't it be true? Because Oprah says, it can't. Inside the cockpit of an older aeroplane, there was what looked like a large round compass. Now, in order to fly safely from one airport to another, there was only one direction the pilot could fly. Now, imagine if the crew and the passenger on board thought that, this pilot, he is narrow-minded. Yes? And let's take a vote as to which way we can fly. Or maybe we can turn wherever we want. What will happen? The plane will be flying in circles. I don't think I want to be on that plane. Folks, the truth is just 1 degree out of 360. From here to heaven, there is only one way. It's hard to stand up for what we believe when it seems like everybody is against us. But listen, if Elijah could do it, if he could walk right into the king's palace, who has hunted him like a dog, and stand up for himself, so could you and I. He stood alone against all the sin and evil in his generation because he trusted in God. Amen. And that's just what we need to do today. Stand up for what is right, even if you are standing alone. Just because something is popular doesn't mean it's right. Since there were so many prophets of Baal, Elijah allowed them to go first. they prepared a bull for sacrifice by cutting it into pieces. And they laid these pieces on top of the wood on the stone altar. Then they began to shout and pray, asking Baal to set the sacrifice on fire. But of course, nothing happened. After a couple of hours, Elijah started mocking the prophets of Baal. And he said in 1 Kings 18 verse 27, he says, "Shout louder! Surely he is a god. Perhaps he is deep in thought, or busy, or traveling. Maybe he is sleeping and must be awakened." The Bible tells us in 1 Kings 18, 28 to 29. It says, "So they shouted louder and slashed themselves with swords and with spears, as was their custom, until their bloods flowed." Midday passed, and they continued their frantic prophesying until the time of the evening sacrifices. But there was no response. No one answered. No one paid attention. No matter how badly these prophets wanted their God to be real, he wasn't. No matter how much they believed it to be true, or how many of them believed it, it still isn't true. And just because the majority of people today believe something to be true or right, that doesn't make it so. William Penn once wrote, "Right is right, even if everyone is against it. And wrong is wrong, even if everyone is for it." It may be the popular opinion of anthropologists that humans evolve from apes. But that doesn't make my grandpa a monkey. It may be the popular opinion of Congress that gay couples have every right to be married, but that doesn't make it moral. You see, popularity doesn't determine reality. I once heard the story of a railway gatekeeper who one very cold night, he required every passenger to show his ticket before going onto the trains. With everyone standing in line, cold and uncomfortable, there was a lot of grumbling and complaining. As one of the passengers held out his ticket, he said, "You are a very unpopular man tonight." The gatekeeper replied, "I only care to be popular with one man, and that is the superintendent and my boss." Now Elijah could have been very popular with his people, and he could save himself a lot of trouble. If he had just caved in and followed the crowds. Now he was a renowned prophet with a powerful reputation that might even have made him to be the high priest of Baal. But Elijah knew that there was only one person he needed to be popular with. Jesus tells us in Matthew 6 verse 24, he says, "No one can serve two masters. Either he will hate the one and love the other, or he will be devoted to the one and despise the other." Now if we try to be popular with the world, we will lose our popularity with the Lord will have lots of friends, but will lose the one friend who is above all others. We may win applause, but we will not hear those precious words saying, "Well done, good and faithful servant. Enter into the joy of your masters." You see, my friends, God's opinion is the only opinion that matters. There is just one God, and there's nothing He cannot do. Now, after the prophets of Baal had their turn, and Baal failed to turn up, it was Elijah's turn. The Bible tells us in 1 Kings 18:31 to 33, it says, Elijah took 12 stones, one for each of the tribes descended from Jacob, to whom the word of the Lord had come, saying, "Your name shall be Israel." Now with the stones, he built an altar in the name of the Lord, and he dug a trench around the altar, large enough to hold 2 seahs of seed. He arranged the woods, cut the bull into pieces, and laid it on the woods. Then he said to them, "Fill 4 jars with water and pour it on the offering on the wood." What does it say here? It says, then Elijah filled 4 jars of water, poured the water all over the sacrifice and the altar itself until everything was soaking wet. And then what did he do? He did it again. Now, I have a hard time burning leaves after it's rained. I can only imagine trying to light this sacrifice on fire after soaking it so thoroughly. But then, Elijah wouldn't be the one lighting the fire. He prayed before all the people. Now, 1 Kings 18 verse 36 to 37 tells us, at the time of the sacrifice, the prophet Elijah stepped forward and prayed. He says, "O Lord, God of Abraham, Isaac, and Israel, let it be known today that you are God in Israel, and that I am your servant, and have done all these things at your command. Answer me, O Lord, answer me, so these people will know that you, O Lord, are God, and that you are turning their hearts back again." And then the Bible says, then the fire of the Lord fell and burned up the sacrifice, the wood, the stones, and the soil, and also licked up the water in the trench. Now when all the people saw this, they fell prostrate and cried, "The Lord, He is God. The Lord, He is God." There is a God. Yahweh is His name. And there is nothing that He cannot do. There is a song that my son learned in children's Sabbath school. Can you guess what that song is? It goes like this. It says, "My God is so big, so strong and so mighty. There's nothing my God cannot do." The thing I love most about hearing him sing is that this song is that he really believes it. He believes that there is nothing his God cannot do. You probably did too when you were younger, when you had a childlike faith. But then we grow up. Life happens. We get put through the ringer. And somewhere along the line, we stop believing it. Sure, when you come to church or talk with your Christian friends, you acknowledge that God is in control and nothing is impossible with Him. But then you're facing unemployment and wondering where your next check is going to come from. And then your marriage failed and you think you have tried everything, and who is going to sort the mess out for you? When this happened, do you really believe it? Do you know how big your God really is? Let me put this into perspective for you. I want you to imagine for a moment that the earth is the size of a golf ball, like that. Yes? And where are you? You are here, right there, tiny, teeny bits on that golf ball. Okay? And if you can imagine how big is the sun, if the earth is the size of this golf ball, the sun is a beach ball 15 feet in diameter. 15 feet. What is 15 feet? I think it's nearly to the end of the room from here. And this beach ball that's this big, how many of this golf ball it can carry? Nearly 1 million. And that is enough golf balls to fill the whole school bus. And that is how big our sun is. But on a cosmic scale, our sun is pretty small. And that is just how big our God is. Our God is so big that He spoke and the universe jumped into existence. Not just one star or 100 stars, but billion upon billions of stars. There are 300 billion stars in our galaxy alone, which is just one out of maybe 10 or 100 billion in our universe. Our God is so big, so strong and so mighty. There is nothing our God cannot do. No matter what our odds, no matter how difficult our task, no matter how much debt, no matter how big the mess, no matter who you are or where you are from, if you believe in Him, you have a star-breather God on your side, and there is nothing He cannot do. Let us turn our Bibles to Philippians chapter 4. Philippians chapter 4 verse 13 says, I can do everything through Him who gives me strength. By trusting in God, we can overcome any challenge. And finally, standing before all the people of Israel Elijah announced in 1 Kings 18 verse 21. How long will you waver between two opinions? If the Lord is God, follow him. If Baal is God, follow him. You see, the real challenge was not Elijah overcoming the prophets of Baal. It was the people overcoming their own sinful nature. Elijah was fighting for their souls, and the battlefield was within their own hearts. He asked them to make a decision to stop playing games and hobbling between two opinions. And they did. They fell face down and said, Yahweh, He is God. Yahweh, He is God. Now you've got a decision to make too. Will you follow the crowd or will you follow Christ? The path he takes isn't the popular path. There will always be higher traffic on a broad road compared to a narrow path. But Jesus came to earth for us to understand that God's opinion is the only one that matters. And He wants us to stand up for what is right, even if we are standing alone. Because the truth is, you are not alone. You've got the God of the universe, the hail bringer and star breather on your side. And together, there is nothing you can't do. It is time for us to make excuses. Stop hesitating and putting it off and decide once and for all to follow the Lord, our God. Amen.